and welcome to our 9th annual Brand X Reviews Halloween special for 2021. Now, the next couple of days I'm going to be picking up from where we left off last year because we were talking about 80s horror films. Now this year that's not necessarily the specific theme, we're going to mix things up a little bit, but there is going to be some of that. But last year we did end talking about The Thing, the John Carpenter movie from 1982 specifically. There were a couple of things I didn't get into with that video, so for this one and tomorrow's show, we're just going to talk about some little things that we didn't really get into then. So for this one, I'm going to be talking about the original book, the novella, Who Goes There, which came out in the 1930s, that the whole thing, literally the thing, was based on. So I've read that recently. I had a discussion with The Core, my co-reviewer, so we're going to have a bit of a brief conversation about this here. We're going to pick up with one more video tomorrow about The Thing, then after that we're really going to get into the 2020 Halloween special for Brand X Reviews. I hope you enjoy it.
So, yeah, obviously last year's Halloween special, we kind of finished it talking about The Thing. We talked about we mainly talked about the 1982 version, didn't we? But we talked about the original version and then the 2011 prequel. But there is, of course, something that I don't think either of us could have talked about at the time because we haven't read it, and that was the original novella that the original 1950s film was based on. That was Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. And I'd never read this until today. You haven't read it, have you?
I am familiar with it, but I haven't actually read it, no.
Yeah, I was familiar with it as well, like from having seen like people talking about it. But it's kind of interesting because there's things in this that have been used in all three versions. So I'll just tell you about it anyway. So the book that I've got is it's like what would you call it? An omnibus or whatever, an anthology of short stories that he wrote. This is the main feature one, obviously, because it's got a lot of interest in it. It was written in 1938, and it's very sort of science based. It's a lot of this is about the science, not the fantasy element or anything. Although there is a bit of that. It's got a little bit of a sort of H.P. Lovecraft thing because you'll be aware of like how the thing, and they do refer to it as the thing in this as well. So they didn't just make that up for the movies. But you'll be familiar how the alien in this, it's kind of Lovecraftian because they see it and they describe it, and how these eyes are full of rage. It's got 3 eyes instead of having hair. It's got these like purple worm things that come out the top of its head.
Yeah, you see, it confuses me because my experience of this has been like the comic book adaptation they did of this. And it just does look goofy as fuck.
Yeah, I was just about to go there myself. I've seen numerous drawings of this thing, and they don't do it justice. When you're reading it, it really is quite scary. Like I say, it's not supposed to be sort of fantasy or horror. Even it's more supposed to be about science. But it does do that. The way it describes the thing, it's like this isn't really what I was getting out of the pictures that I've always seen of this thing. Because, like you say, it does look goofy as hell. So basically, it's closer to the 1982 version, so you can see John Carpenter was kind of going back to the original source material, not just doing a remake of the 1950s movie. It does have a lot of the same characters by name anyway, although the descriptions are particularly accurate to what you see in the 1982 movie. They kind of describe the MacReady character, which was Kurt Russell, as like a sort of bronze statue almost, like he's really tall and he's a really bronze kind of man. The Blair character, Blair, he was the one played by Wilfred Brimley. You're gonna like this as well. I was reading this, I thought I can't wait to tell Carl this. It's got the line in it, "That's not dog, it's imitation." That's from the book. For anyone watching this, I used to like torment the dog and say that the dog was like the thing or something, and I started doing like a silly voice, going, "That's not dog, it's imitation." And you were like, "I don't think he quite said it like that in the movie."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually in the book. I was like reading it and like going, but yeah. So yeah, the book anyway, it's like about 75 pages of this anyway. I mean, depending on which version you get, the number of pages may differ, but it's about 75 pages, so you can easily read it in like one sitting. But going back to what I was saying, the characters in here by name anyway. Some of them there's like Copper, Norris, Gary, all these others in this. I think there's supposed to be 37 people in this on the base in the Antarctic, whereas in the original it's like 12 or something. I think you only really deal with like maybe 17 or 18 of the characters. Like the rest of them is kind of like, that they're there, but they're not really involved. There's a lot of similarities with this. Like the thing originally, when it comes out of the ice, it goes into the dog kennels. It's got all sorts of stuff similar. It's got the blood serum test. They actually do that in this book, whereas in the 1982 film they don't get to do it because the blood gets like all attacked, doesn't it? And somebody sabotages it basically. In this, it doesn't really make sense. The blood serum test doesn't. I couldn't quite understand like how it worked. It's kind of. I don't think it's just me either, because I was reading some other people's like interpretations of it, and I think that's the point: is that the test doesn't work anyway. So what they do is they do pretty much what they do in the movie, where they just get like the blood and like put a torch to it basically, and if it reacts, they know that it's the thing. And I think there's like 14 of the crew actually get caught out that way as well, as being the thing. And instead of them just kind of like melting down or whatever, people just attack them and just like kill them with the bare hands, kind of thing.
I was going to say, don't they just like kick their asses?
Yeah, it's interesting this as well, because the thing in this, it's kind of almost T1000 like at some points, because it can kind of like melt itself down, because you find out that the Blair character is the thing, like he is in the end of the original The Thing movie, and they figure he escapes from the shack just by kind of oozing out of the wherever he can basically. And he does create a kind of an escape vehicle as well, and he doesn't finish it, but it's not like a sort of classic flying saucer like you see in the 1982 movie. It's like an anti-gravity thing with like a backpack, kind of like Thunderball kind of thing, but it's anti-gravity, and it's not atomic power that he puts together as well. But ultimately, he doesn't get to use it. What else do they do in this? Interestingly, as well, because obviously with the original 1982, sorry, the original 1950s movie, they find the thing. The movie starts with them finding the actual spaceship, and they accidentally blow it up. Something similar happens in this, but that's not how the story begins. The story kind of begins with them having the thing on the operating table, then they go back and briefly tell the story of how this thing got on the operating table. That basically the spaceship came 20 million years ago. It's not like a disc like you see in the movie in the 1982 version. It's more like a submarine without a conning tower. It's like a giant cylinder. They sort of say how it gets there, why it's in the South Pole, because this thing has like a massive like magnetic power of its own, and they figure that it kind of attracted itself to the South Pole and kind of spiraled around it for a while, and then just like smashed on some like rocks. So that's kind of interesting. And then the reason they find it is because they're doing like magnetic tests or something, and this thing, like, even though they're in the South Pole, it starts like they pick up on the fact that there's something else like tripping their sensors. So they go over and find it, and obviously they find the thing had crawled out, didn't get very far, woke up probably not in the best of moods. So yeah, a lot of similarities, and the way they describe the thing while it's in the ice is very similar to what you see in the 1950s movie, when obviously it was James Arness in like a goofy costume, but the way they describe him, like the way he looks in the ice and stuff, is like being terrifying. That's from this. There's some stuff that was similar in the 2011 movie as well, or some sort of little things in that, because obviously with that they go into the ship and so on. That doesn't happen in this, but there's a little bit more of, there's a description of the ship itself and like the metals and all that, and that structural stuff that you didn't really get much from with either of the other. I think you did a little bit maybe in the 50s version. But it was quite interesting because when you've seen all three films, you kind of see that little bits here and there that they took. Obviously, the 80s one skips out on them finding the ship. They kind of fobbed that off onto the Norwegian crew. It was like that would have been like a big like thing to go through with the 82 movie. So I think they just decided, well, that whole part of the story, finding the ship, we'll just say someone else found it, therefore we don't have to tell that story. Kind of a clever way of doing it.
Yeah, maybe some guys can come back to it later and tell that story in like a really kind of confused way.
Yeah, in a very contradictory way as well, where there's a lot of other things that
it's like, look,
really...
Norwegians, are they Swedes? You know.
Yeah.
Damn it, Mac.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's nothing to do with like another camp, like a Norwegian camp or anything. It's just this one. But it gets into the science of it as well, about how it's the biology of it and how every cell of it can be, because that's how they basically theorize that it's not dead, because they figure that a lot of life forms like bacteria, microbes, or whatever, can freeze and then come back to life, and this thing is alive at a cellular level, which also ties in with how it shapeshifts, because every cell is like an individual part. It's an individual life form of its own with a mind of its own, which explains how it survived the cold as well. So that was, when you get into the science of it, it's quite interesting. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I say, even if you if you hadn't seen the movies, I think this would still stand as kind of a classic story. So yeah, like I said, I definitely recommend it. But we talked about these last year, so I felt it kind of fits in just continuing this. I think you're gonna have to go shortly anyway, aren't you? So
yes.
But no, definitely worth a read. Like I say, you can get this book, and it's got a load of other stories in there as well. I don't think I'll bother reading them because I was only really interested in the thing.
What books are like kryptonite to a skeleton?
Well, exactly. So yeah, well, I think I'll leave it there anyway.
Book adaptation, Cara reviews.
What was that?
Fairly close to the book.
What were you saying? It cut out.
Well, I was just saying the comic book adaptation of like Who Goes There, which is apparently reasonably kind of close to the book.
Did you say Linkara did it?
Yeah, he did a load of things about the thing.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, because there was a sequel, wasn't there? I've not read it, but I saw the Linkara review about 10 years ago.
Yeah, they did a couple of sequels that just like, yep, Mac's alive. How?
Yeah. Well, the game went there as well, didn't it? The PS2 game.
It's like, no, he's not alive. There was no way he was getting out of that alive. That's the whole point of it. Jesus.
Yeah. Luckily, there's nothing in this story about changing fuses or anything like
that. Yeah, anyway, I'll need to run, so we should wrap up.
Yeah, I'll get off. Right, well, we'll come back tomorrow, and we'll see what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. All right.
So that was part 1 of our 2021 Halloween special at Brand X Reviews. Check back tomorrow, we're going to be talking more about The Thing and some of the recent Blu-ray upgrades that we've made.